Hey everybody, it's your old pal Chuck, and yes, once again I am back with another review. I've been popping these out quite regularly, and I'm glad you've been enjoying them. And today I got something really special for you. This is from the Transformers Studio Series line, Studio Series 86. This is Core Class Ratchet and Wheelie. A few notes right before we start. Number one, I got these figures off of Amazon.com. They are not in stock yet. They don't even have a pre-order up. They usually don't have pre-orders for Core Class. I got this from a third-party seller because I heard reports that they were being found on the West Coast in Targets. Now, if you're looking for pre-orders, I know Entertainment Earth and Big Bad Toy Store have them up for pre-order, and that's where I, as of right now, recommend you get them because third-party sellers and eBay a little pricey right now. Not as bad as Cosmos, but still. Also, if you're wondering if this is like some sort of time displacement multiverse review because of the black backdrop here, no, I'm using my smaller Folio 2 to do these, which I use for core class figures. And long story short, the blue-gray backdrop that I've been using and that I use with the larger Folio 3 was just not working out with this light box. I'll do a little vlog and I'll explain more. It just got too frustrating, so I had to say enough was enough. So that's about it for the intro. To start the review, we'll take a look at Ratchet. Okay, Ratchet is his traditional ambulance look. One thing that is nice is they did include blasters with him. If you remember the scene in the movie, he's dual wielding blasters, and they look exactly like this, which are a nice reproduction of the blasters that were included with Masterpiece Ratchet. Fantastic figure. I actually don't know if I ever really transformed it, but I know I have it. I did, of course. I also, of course, have Ironhide, and again, another fantastic figure. If you don't have either of those, you owe it to yourself to get one. But these are very similar. As you can see by the grips, these are white plastic that have been painted silver. We'll just put these off to the side. Ratchet, I gotta tell you, at the core class, this reminds me of the Protectabot First Aid. I think that was the ambulance there, formed the arm. Very similar, very small, compact design. There is some gappage that does happen when figures of the smaller size use a lot of ball joints. Very hard to get things to line up properly, and also there's a lot of hinges. From what I can what I've heard and understand, there is a lot of similarities to this figure with the Voyager class Ironhide. Now, of course, people are speculating that if this is going to get repainted with a new head into core class Ironhide in that figure, and the Voyager figure will be repainted with a new head into Voyager class Ratchet. And while that sounds good, I wouldn't bet the house on it, just because Hasbro has been known to do their own thing that really only makes sense to them. And by the way, I do want to mention that in the middle of the light bar, you do have a little 3mm port there that you should be able to peg the gun in, although that's probably painted, so I feel a little resistance. So yeah, try not to force it. Well, to start the transformation, what you want to do is pop open these side panels. I will mention, at least on mine, on this side, this panel sometimes has a little bit of a hard time staying in place. Massage it, it should be fine. There's a slot there in the front that will peg into a tab there on the rear. Do that again. And now what we're going to do is split the entire rear of the ambulance open and pop this out. And you might have noticed it did separate the arms there, but I'll just go back and peg those together. And again, dealing with ball joints, getting things lined up. Now, I do want to mention on my figure, this leg has a habit of popping off that joint just due to the rotation. It is what it is. So first what you want to do is close down that panel, rotate it at the knee joint, and then rotate it so the opening for the ball joint faces down. Do that again on this side, and try to grab from the actual plastic and to get a little leverage to rotate, and then bring these down, actually, and forward, And then what you want to do is grab it from the hips here and pull this down. There is a slot right there where I guess be the rear of the figure, and there's a tab that this will peg into, thus giving you the lower body of Ratchet. To finish off the lower body, rotate this around. As you can see, as has many people pointed out, unlike the Masterpiece figures, the Core and Voyager class are able to hide the bumper. Frankly, I never noticed that in the cartoon, so what are you going to do? Coming back around to the rear, unpeg the arms if they haven't already unpegged just from your shenanigans. Rotate like so. Next, what you want to do is rotate from this arm joint here, I guess be the armpit joint under the what would be the shoulder pad, so that the port on the peg on this side faces up and the slot on this side faces up. Next, what you want to do is rotate from the shoulder blade, which means you'll be rotating this internal joint so that the shoulders face forward with the port and the peg facing to the back. You can then turn this around and bring the arms down, and you'll know you've got this right when the fists are facing and the elbows are facing in the right direction, and you have the Autobot Rescue logo facing forward. Finally, to finish things off, flip back this panel piece, come forward and open up the windshield. You'll see Ratchet's head right there. There's a little tab right here on this hinge section that will help get it started. There's also a tab there on the back of Ratchet's head if you need more help. Bring it up, and what you want to do is make sure the grooves on the base of Ratchet's head and the grooves there on the shoulders all line up so that the windshield will peg in 1, 2, 3, 4 different places. Now what we can do to finish off the transformation is come in, take the guns, strew them about wherever, turn Ratchet's head 90 degrees sideways, and then just flail the arms out ever so slightly, have them fall backwards, and there we have Ratchet as he appeared in the Transformers, the movie from 1986. Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. That was a really bad joke. I was actually going to start the review in robot mode and have this be the transformation and even go into my final thought. I'm sorry, guys. I couldn't help myself. Lots of people have been making the jokes between Ratchet and Ironhead. I just had to come in. But you know what? Let's pause, and I will give you my final thoughts. Real final thoughts on Ratchet. Hasbro, with the core class figures, like they've done with the deluxe Voyager and Leader class figures, did include a little bit of a backdrop here, which is the bridge of the Autobot spaceship. Unfortunately, it was also used to hold the figure. Usually they give you a fake one that holds the figure and then a real one, but at the core class price point they didn't. But as you might be able to tell, there are some holes from where the plastic ties were, which kind of work with this. I really dig Ratchet. I think this is a fine figure, a great addition to the core class line. I will be honest, I don't know if or for how long this will be a part of my Studio Series 86 display, just because size-wise it doesn't fit, and I'm pretty sure there will be a larger Ratchet coming somehow, some way, just not how people expect, and that will fit in a lot better. But as just a little fiddle desk toy, it's not bad, because if you think about it, we've got Ratchet, we got Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Soundwave, Starscream, Megatron, Hot Rod. So we're slowly but surely building up like that core G1 cast at the core size class. So in terms of smaller displays, with smaller figures, you can do more with the display, have more with scale and stuff. So yeah, that's about it. So what we'll do right now is we'll pause and we'll take a look at Wheelie. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at Wheelie. Now, Wheelie was a real surprise because many of us thought that in terms of inclusion in the Studio Series 86 line, we were only going to have that static figure that came with Grimlock, who was more of a gimmick figure where it just would sit on Grimlock. But as a designer explained, at the time they did not realize that they could that core class would be available to them in the Studio Series 86 line. So when they found out that it was, they immediately jumped on and wanted to do a proper Wheelie. And here the figure is. Now, there, of course, there are some issues. A lot of people pointed out the visible hands. I really don't mind it. This isn't meant to be like an Earth mode vehicle. It's some form of futuristic space car. And if you remember that old Golden storybook that was like hand-painted imagery, Wheelie was more of a wild jungle boy. So I hope that in the Selects line we do get a version of Wheelie that based on that, maybe with a little bit of a different paint scheme, but some more of those jungle-based weapons. Never had Wheelie as a kid, but was a fan of the character. And again, can we just tip the hat to the great Frank Welker, showing his range and doing voices. You had Galvatron, you had Megatron Soundwave, and then you have at the other end that higher pitch Wheelie voice. One cool feature of the in vehicle mode is you can flip up this panel right here, if I can get it. And that droids. Oh, there we go. And there you can see Wheelie's head is present, much like on the original toy, where the face was molded in here, and this part would form the brim of the hat. So it's a nice little homage. It does roll very nicely. Pinned wheels in the front, mushroom pegged here in the back. With budgetary reasons. Start the transformation. Come into the back here, unpeg the arms from the side, bring them down and around on these double hinge joints, just like so. Come around the rear here, bring up the butt flap, and you can do this at the beginning. I just find it easier. Go ahead and remove his slingshot. Much easier to do. Now, in terms of the next step is you want to, I find it easy just to push on those sections there that are right behind the front wheels. Those are actually the shoulders in robot mode. And this will help you flip up this whole section here till we get Wheelie in a sitting position. Next, what you want to do is separate the legs. They peg together right there in the front. And this is something kind of cool that I almost missed. There's a drop hip joint here. So when you bring the legs out, you actually want to bring them out. Make sure you extend them out from the hip. And that when going into the vehicle mode, when you collapse the legs, you collapse them from this hip joint so you have the clearance to peg them together. Rotate the lower part of the legs at the knee joint so that the feet are facing upward, like so. You'll know because you'll see the slot there and the tab there. Flip the feet up. Bring the legs down, just like so. And we're just about done, believe it or not. Open up this canopy here in the back. This will help fold down Wheelie's chest. And there are some slots here on the chest that will that will peg into the panel there. Line it all up. The butt flap is basically now static in place. So there's you have Wheelie in its robot mode. Now, one thing that isn't mentioned is that there is a little bit of like a giggity movement with the joint here. Make sure you pull the head forward so it sits in its proper place, and then just bend the elbows to unpeg the arms. They do lock into place there. Grab the slingshot and peg it into its hand. So there's Wheelie. Nice, fun figure, much better than what we got with Grimlock. The feet are molded in an angled position. You do have a swivel here at the head, and of course that giggity giggity joint, ball jointed shoulders, ball jointed elbows, nice and tight, no concerns for floppiness, ball joint at the hips, ball joint at the knee, so you do have some range of movement. Now, one thing I will say about this version of Wheelie is that unfortunately you really can't get it in a cocking the slingshot type of pose. I'll show you at the end the best I can do. And let me just also say, clearly, this is a lot better than that Titans Return Wheelie. Yes, it did have to have the ability to hold a Titan Master, and I think that's where that figure failed, because there was no central core, pardon the pun, point for everything to peg into, so you had to rely on the friction, the tightness of the friction joints, the tabs and stuff. And at least on my copy, it was a little loose, especially in the hips, which just made it far too fiddly and not fun. This is fun to transform, and this is a lot more enjoyable. So we'll pause, and I'll come back with my final thoughts on Wheelie. So, like I mentioned, here's the best slingshot cocking pose I can do. Like with Ratchet, Wheelie does come with a backdrop, but this backdrop was the one used to store the figure, and as you can see, it does have the same holes, where unlike with Ratchet, there's no ironic use to it, and it kind of stands out. I'm a little disappointed we didn't get a pure clean backdrop, which, by the way, this is taken from the inside of the Quintesson base where Wheelie first meets Grimlock, so that's what it does look like. But yeah, Wheelie looks fun, and I'm pretty sure that even though it doesn't have dedicated slots on the legs, you should be able to get this figure to sit on Grimlock with or without the use of the various pegs and slots that the static figure has. Again, great figure. Now, to give you my overall final thoughts, I think both figures are fantastic, but if you really had to pick one, I would go with Wheelie, since at the core class size, it fits in more scale-wise with the Studio Series 86 line, and definitely this version of Wheelie is going to go on display. Probably going to sit him on Grimlock's arm, which is funny because I could have been doing that with the other one, but this is just a much better figure. Ratchet, I'm going to fiddle with, have a good time with, but really, it's just going to end up going back in its box until that Voyager class figure comes, if it does come, and takes its rightful place on my Studio Series 86 shelf, which the line has to come to an end eventually. We're now past the 36th anniversary of the movie, so at some point, enough has to be enough. That's about it for the review. Thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. It helps to communicate to YouTube through their algorithms. This is your old pal Chuck, for Wheelie, and of course Ratchet. We will see you next time.